We are live. Benjamin Tansky. This is Mr. Mark Reynolds. Thank you for coming on the show here today. Um, Talk to us. Tell us about public safety. Is today a special week or a month? I'm not sure. There's some in
Well,
the
it is
industry.
National School Safety Week, Ben. So it is a good topic to have on your show.
That is,
Um,
I did not
and
know
what
that.
we specifically focus on is in building wireless safety. So we are in the wireless world that we're talking about, whether it's cellular or public safety, police and fire, EMS radios.
Okay. Yeah,
So a
those are
little
all like
different.
digital stuff, right? It's all digital.
It's not actually. Some of the fire departments in rural America still use some, I'd call it antiquated old VHF gear, but it works. It works. The stuff that's been around since the 1960s is still flourishing in parts of rural America.
Interesting. Interesting. You would have thought
Now,
by now
there is an
everybody's migrated
organization,
over. Oh, sorry. Go
not
ahead.
all of it. It really depends upon the jurisdiction and the needs of that jurisdiction. You'd have to say that New York City has different needs than Topeka, Kansas, in their communications, and in rural America even lesser so. So you may want, in a rural environment, you may want to go for range for your emergency services. How far can that radio signal travel? You may need to travel 30 or 40 miles with that signal, whereas in a metro area it may be limited to a number of blocks.
Understood. Yeah, definitely different equipment for different applications, different locations, for sure.
Right, just like natural wireless does when you're deploying point to point or point to multi point gear, you choose the right bandwidth, the right frequency, the right
Yep.
type of redundancy for the client's application. We try to do the same thing in the public safety field.
Yeah, I remember you and I were talking, and you were mentioning stuff I didn't even realize. There's like all these fire code compliances, testing that needs to get done, all of this stuff that do property owners know they have to be in compliance for a lot of these regulations?
So, this is a really interesting topic that you're bringing up. In building public safety is a IFC 510 NFPA 72 fire code, which determines adequate signal levels for emergency responder radios inside of a new building. Some states, such as Connecticut now, have recently revised their code saying new and existing buildings must meet this coverage level. Now,
Interesting.
whether individual jurisdictions apply it to that level, it's yet to be seen, but there's certainly a push towards testing buildings and making sure they're safe for emergency
What about
responders.
like shopping malls? Do they fall into that same category?
Right now, and only right now, we're talking about new construction, newly constructed or remodeled buildings. However, that grandfathering will end, just like smoke alarms and sprinklers ended. Well, eventually the fire marshals are getting around to saying, yep, all buildings over a certain square footage or occupancy type will need to be tested for emergency responder
I
communications.
mean, I asked because I went to a shopping mall the other day near where I live, and there was zero cell coverage, and there was no Wi-Fi network available, and I'm like, how is that even possible in this day and age? Right? Is that even?
Well, take that to the next level. Imagine if someone needs emergency service. Say someone has a heart attack in the mall,
Yeah, it's a
and
huge
the fire
liability.
department
It's
needs to come
huge.
in.
Yeah,
It's huge,
huge.
and it's preventable, Ben. That's another part of this. Let's take it to the next level right now. While we're talking about National School Safety Week,
Hmm.
in building wireless for schools, campuses, whether you're a K through 12 or whether you're higher education, you are going to have some communication requirements inside your building for public safety. And the first tenant, I guess, or the three pillars of public safety would be number one, can an occupant of a building make an outbound 911 call? If there's an emergency, can I get a call out?
Right.
So is there a phone available in the building, or can they do they need to use their cellular phone to make that call? So number one is alerting the authorities that there's an emergency even taking place.
First
Let's
step.
make sure
Yep.
that call happens,
Yep.
right? Number two, if we're talking about schools and higher education, there's been a system that's been deployed in most universities, and it's happening now in K through 12, especially high schools, And this is called an emergency mass notification system. So if something happens on a campus, a gas leak, a tornado, an intruder, something bad happens, and they need to notify the faculty, students, and staff, you'll get a text message on your phone stating what the emergency is and the action that you should be taking, whether it's shelter in place or go to an evacuation terminal. Whatever the case is, you'll get your instructions from that emergency mass notification. And that notification has to reach you. It's not an optional thing, so it has to be delivered to you. And then the third tenet of this, again, is will the police, fire, and EMS radios work inside of the facility? Say you're in a school, there's a cafeteria fire. Can the firefighters communicate during that event? Or someone has an emergency in the gymnasium, a heart attack in the gym. Can someone come in there and solve that problem?
So you're saying those mobile radios that they carry, they have to be connected to their trunk system, their digital system, and then if there's no coverage out, because most of the time those trunk systems don't work indoors, they have to connect to I would guess a Wi-Fi network that's available to them, right? How does
Well, not really. The emergency responders have their own frequencies, so they're not going on Wi-Fi. So Safer Buildings Coalition, which is headed by a former fire chief, and they're a national lobbying group for public safety. Safer Buildings did a survey in October of 23, and they discovered that 52% of school buildings that they tested failed to have proper radio coverage for emergency responders.
Like dead zones, right? Dead zones. You go in
multiple dead zones. So this is the business that my company is in. We test schools for cellular and we test for public safety radio. And if there are low areas, dead areas, we install a signal booster. So there is a remedy for all of these problems.
53% were not in compliance. That's, I can't even go down that road if something bad were to happen. A fire, even firemen were to come in and their radios wouldn't work. They couldn't communicate to the outside. They probably could communicate internally to one another, but they can't talk outside of wherever they're at. All right.
Here's worst case scenario for you. And you know this. Unfortunately, you know this. The country knows this worst case scenario. The Uvalde school. Okay. Mm-hmm. When that massacre happened, from the moment that the police were notified until the moment they went into the building, that was 1 hour and 14 minutes before someone went in there to solve that problem. The reason was because there was no radio communication. Well, it's one of the contributing factors in the report. A strong contributing factor was there was no emergency services radio communications inside of the Uvalde Rod School.
So what that means is the people that were inside the school couldn't communicate outside. They were locked.
It meant if police officers went inside the school, they could not report back to the superior officers what's going on. So there was no command and control in that situation. So that's what it meant. It endangered lives.
So to fix that problem, you got to put boosters in there for those first responder systems. And
now, conversely, there was a similar incident in Nashville about a year ago. And this school had adequate in-building wireless communications. The police and fire radios were boosted in that facility. Right. And that event lasted 4 minutes. And the gunman was taken down and the problem was solved quickly because the police could communicate when they were inside of the school.
But you have to also look at the entire country, right? I don't know where you are in the country, but most of the schools in the United States were built in the 50s, right?
Sure.
And that's I'm sure that's a major contributing factor. I mean, you're talking serious construction to core drill, put all this equipment in, and it's necessary. It's necessary.
When you look at a town and you look at a municipality, what's the most valuable resource a municipality has? It's its children. And where are they? They're all concentrated in these areas. And unfortunately, since 1999, starting in Columbine, when I lived a mile away from that when it happened, starting then, we've had 329 school shootings in America. That's just, and not just shootings. I'm talking about school safety for other types of emergencies, whether that's a student that has a seizure in a classroom or there's a fight that breaks out or some other reason why the police or fire department need to be called to the school. these schools are built like bomb shelters in the 1950s. They
Yes, they are.
effectively block
Yeah,
radio
yeah,
communications from getting in.
yeah.
That's the issue, and we're trying to solve that.
Well, and then the flip side to that is once they do get updated, they get low E glass, and low E glass reflects out all the RF signal, right?
Oh yeah, any lead building today with low E glass and modern building materials, those buildings will definitely attenuate the radio signal coming in and require a bidirectional amplifier for the customer.
Yeah, which is most people don't even know that. They're like, oh, I have a brand new building, my connectivity is going to be great until they go in. They're like, why is there no service? Why does this not work?
There's
Why does
no
that not work?
cellular and there's no public safety signal because
Yeah.
they're tight. They're well built, but conversely, it blocks out the radio.
What about talk to me about DAS stuff? Are you doing? I know we spoke in the past about DAS and big carriers like Verizon, AT&T, et cetera, et cetera. We're building out DAS networks and paying for them, and then I guess they stopped. I can't remember
Well, I
when.
think they redirected their resources towards more of the 5G deployment
Uh-huh.
and updating with that. And 5G, especially with AT&T, they've also partnered with FirstNet to do that deployment. So they've been heavily investing in their outdoor, if you will, and not so much carrier-funded
Well, it's kind
DAS,
of shifted,
unless
right?
you're in a stadium.
Well, it shifted.
If
It
you're,
shifted. It
yeah,
shifted. The
middle.
building developers, landlords are now tasked with building the DAS networks for the tenants, right? Is that
Correct. So you can either do that on a managed service, like a managed host can do that, or you can you can hire a company like mine to come in and put in cellular boosters throughout your building. Sure, that's another way to do it, but the carriers are no longer they're no longer really funding that. So it's developer funded.
but you got to get the carriers on board to do the DAS. They have to be at the head end in the basement typically, right? You got to build it out to their spec. Or
It
has that
really
changed?
depends upon. There's been a paradigm shift with that. One of the vendors that we work with pretty closely, called Nextivity, has a terrific off-air solution that is certified for use as long as you register it, and that's good. I'd say
Is that the
really,
4000i?
yeah, that's the 4000. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
yeah,
Quattro 4000. It's a
yeah.
terrific product, and we like it.
That's great.
And it goes in with Cat 5 cabling as well, so it makes it's a lot less painful for a business owner to install that versus routing a half-inch coax cable throughout the facility.
Try bending that everywhere. Exactly.
Yes, well, that's what we use on BDAs, Ben. So when building owners are not proactive and don't understand the code, in many cases, my company gets a last-minute call from a panicked general contractor saying, oh my goodness, the fire marshal's requesting, telling us that we don't have radio coverage in our building. What should we do? We need an ERRC test. And I explained to him that we go through the building and divide it into a series of grids and take radio measurements.
Yep.
And if the building doesn't pass, then we have to put in this system to pass fire code. And you really want to address that while your building's under construction and not when it's completed. That's the problem.
It gets more expensive, exponentially more expensive.
But yeah, your risers are closed. All your low voltage cabling has been done, and now you have to rip open to put in. It's really a bloody nightmare for these developers. So we urge them to call us early in the process, well before the building's even started, to get us to start the planning on their BDAs.
Going back to the FirstNet, how does FirstNet? I know that North Carolina is awful with the hurricane. Is the net was FirstNet operational? Do they bring it back up first? What's the protocol for telecom in situations?
Well, they
like
do.
that?
FirstNet is supposed to get first use of that network. They're supposed to be given priority access on those public network, but they also have their own band of frequencies that I think AT&T has an exclusive FirstNet operations, just like Verizon does with their emergency response teams.
Yeah, they have all that. I wonder if it would, FirstNet or AT&T should do a JV with with a Starlink just to get stuff hot, in minutes, basically, not even hours, in minutes.
I think Starlink, and I know that you and David had touched that on a previous segment, but I think Starlink has a very good place for emergency response. I think it has a good place in rural areas, or if you're out on your boat or in an RV. I don't think anything's going to beat the terrestrial wireless service that natural wireless can deliver. I mean,
Oh, a
it's
plug
not.
as a plug. I love it. I love it.
Well, I mean, look, Ben, your company, I've been in the wireless industry for now 37 years, and I've seen your company has been around. And unlike the large carriers, when typically companies like yours that serve metro areas and wireless, they hustle, they fix their problems. And you guys are I mean, that's why you're in business.
Yeah, if you have problems, you fix them. It's all about customer
Well,
support.
I got a kick out of your earlier segment when it's redundancy to fiber. I'd be like, are you kidding me? I don't need fiber. I could just use my wireless connection. There's no reason to have fiber.
Yeah, no,
This
you're
is
right.
perfect.
Most of our customers we're primary with them. Totally, totally. I mean,
And with good reason. I mean, that is the way to go.
it's so much more scalable. You know, you're preaching to the choir, you and I here, but you know, we call our product fixed wireless fiber because you know people aren't sophisticated and they keep hearing, you know, other big carriers. We have 5G fixed wireless. How confusing is that to the public, right?
Well, just think about reliability. People say wireless isn't reliable. Are you kidding me? We use it for public safety all the time. We use it for cellular phones and if it's designed correctly and installed correctly and managed, it's another highly reliable technology.
Absolutely, it has to be done correctly. Totally, millimeter wave.
And these 5G fixed wireless imitators, if you will, I don't know what you want to call it. Yeah, if you are a business,
these things on your screen, these are like, they're pitching this as 5G fixed wireless. First of all, you can't drop ship fixed wireless. You cannot drop ship fixed wireless. Impossible. These are hotspots. These are all relying on cellular stuff. They're good.
That you know what? That's all it is. It's a glorified hotspot with a self-install. Most customers don't want to have to mess around with that. They want the expert to come in, provide them a high level of service, and that's what they're looking for. They're not looking for some mail order, maybe my internet works.
That's real internet right there. That's good. That's fixed wireless. That's to the core.
Yeah, professionally installed, aligned, top quality equipment, line of sight, all the things that are correct.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of I do education. If I educate correctly, people are come knocking. If I don't educate correctly, people don't come knocking. It's very simple.
Well, it's like my business. We try to educate the builders on the advantages of planning for their wireless deployments in their buildings while they're under construction. We try to advise schools and other campuses that, gee, there's a safety element here you should be considering. If you don't have in-building public safety, your occupants are at risk, especially in these high-value buildings. I'm not saying, hey, every warehouse and all these other places need to get tested, but schools, healthcare, places of worship, absolutely.
Shopping malls. The shopping mall thing really irks me because, you know, they're going to spend $2 million updating the facade or the front of the building, but they won't put connectivity in there. Even the retail tenants in a mall, they can't even do POS transactions because there's no connectivity.
We speak to box stores all the time that offer we have online coupons and all these other wonderful things. And it's funny because my wife tells me I go into these stores and my phone doesn't work when I go into these stores. How can I possibly do any online shopping? You walk into a large home improvement store and you want to find out what aisle certain type of hex nut is in. You can't go on your phone and search it.
It's insane. It baffles me. Honestly, it baffles me. It does.
Well, I think that we will see more connectivity coming to the retail world.
I have my what's the right word I'm looking for? I have my suspicion on why a lot of shopping malls have terrible connectivity. There's a company out there, I'm not going to name names. They're basically an aggregator, and they work with pretty much most of the shopping mall owners and conglomerates, and they lock them into these contracts for shitty DSL service, and they're charging $50,000 a month. The service is costing them $500 a month. Would you change it? No, you wouldn't change it. And I think that's a huge thing to do with the shopping mall specifically. There's a couple of companies that basically control the telco in all these malls. And until that changes, maybe that'll be the.
Well, we'll probably see some stores either installing their own
They do.
communication systems to bypass it, or whatever.
Yeah, I see
Because
boosters. I see Target has done that where I am. They put their own boosters in the store. I mean, how can a shopping mall not have proper or adequate telecom? How can they get a pass? How can they get a pass?
I look at it almost down to the restaurant level. There's a lot of we don't say do small jobs like that, but I look at these places and say, why don't you have good connectivity for your customers? What about a couple that goes out to dinner and they have a babysitter and now their cell phone doesn't work? Well, they're not going to go back because they need to be able to reach that babysitter.
Yeah, and shopping malls in general are
connected.
dying. They're hurting big time. I get that it's hard to invest in it, but your basic commodities are like what? Internet, water, power. You need them. You need that.
So we're seeing us shopping malls here in Eastern Massachusetts being converted to adding up living spaces and apartments next to them and making them a mall with a place to live. You can live at the mall now.
I thought malls that were empty could be used for like drone racing. Whatever.
Yeah, I think they're trying to repurpose them. I'm not really too sure for what. I mean, Amazon seems to have cornered the market on retail, so they haven't got into wireless yet, thankfully. But
so, and I said the other day, is that Starlink I think is a phenomenal replacement for coax. I think it's on par. I mean,
look, the latency is not there for a lot of business applications. It's okay, I think, if you're in a rural area and you don't have anything else, it's a great option.
Absolutely rural area. If you have nothing, it's beautiful. I'm just peeved that, your traditional coax carriers haven't upgraded the last mile to fiber, and they keep refusing to because they don't want to spend the money. They don't want to spend the money.
They don't want to spend the money. The big carriers have already abandoned their copper.
Yeah. And they're diversifying. They're basically they're letting it go. They're doing what? Software-defined networking to beef up the speed for coax. How can you put 2.4 gig download and 35 meg upload on a coax connection and not change anything? And why invest good money? Just spend a little bit more money and upgrade the last mile in phases, and you wouldn't have this problem. I'm frustrated about that whole thing. Sorry to get on a tangent there.
No, understood. I mean, this is an interesting business that we're in with a lot of there's always moving parts and personalities, and people seem to want to drive it one way or the other. I mean, guys who have been in the industry for a long time, like myself and you and some of your other guests, I mean, we have a different perspective than, say, some of the newer people that haven't seen the LMDS disasters of the 90s. And we've been through the ups and downs in the wireless world.
And it's evolutionized. It's changed so much. Fixed wireless that we sell, the natural wireless sales, is tremendous. I mean, you said it. I mean, we can push 20 gig symmetrical speeds over our network, which is an incredible amount of bandwidth. That ultra low latency, at 2 millisecond round trip latency to the internet edge at 20 gig. An affordable price
for the customer too, Ben. I can say
that is very true, and at an affordable price. Yeah. Totally.
In 2001, I was one of Dragon Wave's earliest employees, and we sold a 50 megabit licensed radio at the time for about $45,000.
Wow.
But that's what the market would bear.
Yeah, no, I know. I get it.
Compared to multiple T1, compared to your monthly T1 reoccurring costs, putting in a 50 megabit microwave was far more cost effective. 6 months ROI.
But it still is. It still is these days, right? It still is. It's still cheaper to do a fixed wireless bill than it is to trench fiber and run fiber and put all the switches and routers in place and pay all the labor.
And forget all that, Ben, the time. How long does it take when you order service? If I order service from Natural Wireless, I bet I'm having it in less than 30 days.
I like to say 5 business days from approval. Yeah. A lot faster. Yeah.
Right. You think about trenching fiber, getting approvals,
days,
getting it done.
Weeks, months. Yeah.
Yeah. It's and then if there's a problem, as you know, with fiber, it's really hard to fix and identify. If there's a problem with a wireless unit, well, I can just replace that radio and put a new one back on the back, and I'm out of there.
That's it. In and out.
Yeah.
in and out, and you RMA that bad boy, and it comes back new.
Yeah.
Done
And the
deal.
customer really doesn't feel any pain, which
No,
is
they,
the key thing.
if you natural wires, we bring in two links. There's two links. The other one's in production. The other one's getting fixed. Both are fixed. They both go back into production. It works. It's scalable. It's efficient.
It's smart business.
Oof, that's strong. Thank you. Wow.
That's what it is.
What's your take? Are you familiar? The other day I talked about someone brought up Ciclu. Are you
Yeah.
familiar at all with Ciclu? Are you familiar with
Yeah,
that?
I'm familiar with Ciclo. Yeah. What happened? And
Why do you think
yeah.
it traded so low? Why do you think they sold for so little and they have so much equipment out there? What do you think happened?
What equipment's out there, though? Are you talking about the
Wisp
60?
from
But
Wisp.
60, is there a lot of 60 gig stuff out there for video links that may have sold really cheap in the 60 gig chipsets now, if you look at them, or just, a lot of guys are, I don't know what their margin was on 60 versus their 80 gig stuff. And I don't know what they sold for in 60 gig versus 80 gig.
I don't know, but if you just looking in New York and as a metropolitan area or Boston, you go look at light poles. I'm pretty sure you're going to see those little cubes. That's 60, right?
Yeah.
Those are 60
Yeah.
gigahertz, and they're everywhere. Anytime you see a camera, surveillance camera, there's a cube either on top or below
I
it.
think your previous guest hit it right. The word debt. I think the company must have had a lot of debt.
That was crazy because they were selling. I mean, thousands, tens of thousands of units, and to only trade at 13 million is it's unfortunate.
It's dismal. It's not a good indicator for the industry. And we've seen some companies kind of take it. I think a few things happened in the fixed wireless industry, that big dynamic changes for the better in the long run. And that was really when Mimosa and Ubiquiti hit the market with their low cost licensed gear. It opened the door to a lot of other people.
Yeah, the Ubiquiti is a huge business, but that's a huge market right there, huge market share for WISPs all over the country.
If they didn't lower the price to say $2,000 a link range for an 11 gigahertz radio, there wouldn't be that many out there. If they were still selling in the $10,000 to $15,000 per link, WISP wouldn't be putting them in as fast.
I mean, you can go to Nokia and pay that also if you want. That's fine.
Sure, right. You can go get an Aviat link, or you can go get a SAF link or someone else's link for sure. But they lowered the barrier to entry. And I think that helped a lot of WISPs. And it seems like there's a lot of companies out there that have used the lowest price approach and done pretty well with it.
Yeah.
In the WISP market.
I agree totally. And it all goes back to education. For me personally, when I'm selling, people always come back, oh, it's wireless, it's Wi-Fi, it's not. Use it every day.
It's not. It is not Wi-Fi, my friend. It is not Wi-Fi.
It's like those long horn antennas you used to see on the side of the road, and those are your long distance phone calls. That's microwave. Those are bounce shots. Those are bounces.
Well, we still have a few of them from Chicago to New York.
Well, I still use those for those routes. Another plug for high frequency trading right there.
There you go. Well, we all made a few dollars on it back in the day.
Hopefully, some people did. There's an organization in Australia. I forget, was it EM Clarity? Was purchased by McKay Brothers. EM Clarity has like some, they're like the DARPA, or they were the DARPA of, or they work with DARPA in Australia, and they had tremendous amounts of power and throughput for their equipment. That's why McKay Brothers bought them for that reason. No error correction, transferring it sub nanoseconds, like insane speeds.
No forward error correction whatsoever. Just what goes in goes out. It's just a media converter.
Yeah, but going from New York to Chicago,
right?
Yeah.
I have to say, Bob Mead at McKay, he was a pretty smart dude. I've done some work with him. Impressive guy.
Say so myself. Kudos, big time.
Yeah,
big time.
I think the high frequency. We actually did quite a few. My other company, I'll throw a plug in for RF Datacom. We have done quite a few low latency projects in New York City using private 39 gigahertz.
Wow. I mean, there's so much squatting in that vertical. a lot of people are squatting on those frequencies, and some people were flagged. Not going to name names, but they paid a hefty fine. But still, people squat on that, on top of the data centers and wherever they are on those towers. They don't want anyone jumping on.
The group that paid the fine had a very interesting approach. They paid a radio manufacturer to frequency hop their fixed licensed type radio every 24 hours. So it would appear that they had more radios actually deployed than they actually had in service.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
And they did pay a hefty fine, but if you consider the fine they paid versus how much they were actually able to sell that spectrum for, the fine was well worth it.
The fine was what? A few hours.
400 mil?
A few hours of how much money to comprehend how much is transacted over those links is a lot.
It is, and some of the links are only 75% reliable.
It doesn't matter.
They're not 5.9s. They're just they're running a link to Greenwich from New York. We use it when we can.
Yeah,
they're out there.
That's a whole business that's shaded. It's very secretive.
Very secretive.
So
worse than the military jobs, I'll tell you. I mean, I've done a lot of military work, and the high frequency trading guys, they are more tight-lipped than the military guys.
I mean, it begs the question of how much of the revenues that these banks, these financial institutions make is based on high frequency trading.
Well, it really makes you think where the little guy stands. I mean,
please
don't really stand a chance against that.
I can't day trade at home. I'm like hovering over enter, and they've already bought and sold 25 times.
Yeah, that's the crux of that.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, they're smart for doing that, and I was the one that introduced the EM Clarity to McKay Brothers years ago, and that was pretty cool. That was definitely pretty cool.
Well, it just shows, though, that getting back to wireless in general, how reliable the technology is. It's used for public safety. It's used for high frequency trading. It's used for all types of. It's used for your licensed cellular backhaul.
Yeah, day to day.
So people shouldn't be afraid of it when someone says, "Oh, you have a wireless connection. I'd rather have fiber." Really? Why is that? You use wireless every day. You rely on it.
A lot of it is marketing, right? You're going to see the same commercial 25 times. You're going to be like, okay, I'm going to do it. And it's always back down to the coax and the fiber,
I just think it goes out of if I look at something with fiber, it goes out of my building. It goes into some unknown black hole through so many routers, through so many data. I don't know where this is going. Who's controlling it?
Yep.
If some manhole's ready to catch on fire, I have no idea what's going to happen to that. Or if it goes off the top of my roof and I can see the other building with binoculars that I'm shooting it at, I feel pretty good about it.
You know what's going on. You see the endpoints. Yeah.
It's not complicated. It's far simpler. You've reduced a lot of potential error points along the route. You just have a transmit and a receive. That's it.
Preaching to the choir. I love it.
Well, that's why I've been in this business for so long, Ben, and in many different facets of it, from military man packs to vehicles to border patrol projects to all types of different cellular jobs, and now in building wireless. I'm a big believer in the technology. Yeah,
that's so cool.
It's really cool.
I mean, I don't know if anyone out there is listening even knows, but like Navy ships use fixed wireless to communicate between each other, right? Like,
absolutely.
I bet you 99.95% of people listening had no idea, and they use it every day.
Sure. Auto aligning antennas, no problem.
Yep.
Now the technology is solid. I think maybe some of the telco guys, the wireline guys, did a pretty good job muddying up the waters and making people feel like wireless isn't that reliable, when in fact, it's pretty damn reliable.
Well, they do it for a reason. Have a wire. They're doing it for a reason, right? Because fixed wireless can pretty much decimate coax if it's designed properly in towns across America. So many towns in America need new infrastructure. Fiber is expensive to run. And I think the skill set to deploy fixed wireless correctly to end users, it's very specific. You need to know how to design it correctly for it to work well. Even a hybrid, like a fiber and a fixed wireless as endpoints, is still faster to deploy, just as reliable, right?
If fixed wireless, if you have a solid engineer design that link, or something along those lines where you know the equipment you're using is solid, the engineer is good, you're
Yep.
going to have a fine link. Fiber optic cable, yeah, okay. I want to order it and wait 6 months. Maybe it'll show up. I don't know where it came from, and I don't know where it's going. And
It's touching a subsea fiber somewhere on the East Coast.
yeah, I like the fixed wireless world. I understand it. It's far simpler than fiber to me. There's not a lot of guesswork involved. If you can get a good signal there, you're going to be in good shape. Just keep the power on. And that's another thing.
Yeah.
Natural wireless, you have the ability to install battery banks for people. There are things they can do to have redundant power supplies. So even if they're in a bad storm and they lose their power and everything else, well, they don't lose their internet.
I mean, the same to be said with fiber. I mean, depending how the fiber is designed, it also needs backup batteries. And my suspicion is that fixed wireless equipment uses a lot less power than fiber equipment does on the imports.
Well, my sister lives in Tampa, and I saw the storm surge that came through the other day.
Terrible. It's awful. Yeah,
and
awful.
When that gets into the ground, and that's going to just, I don't care what's under there. You're going to have problems. You're going to get water in your conduits. You're going to get,
boom.
When you have 15 feet of water.
Segue into that picture. That's Miami. We bought network infrastructure from Tower Stream back in May, and we bought Miami when they had a bunch of assets. Then we're rebuilding it out, and yeah, to your point, it floods all the time, right there, all the time.
Why do you want to put your fiber in a flood zone? I want my connection above the flood
because
I don't want it in the flood.
They're hammered. They're everyday commercials. Fiber all the time. Fiber poles. Fiber.
Fiber's good. I mean, you have fiber. Why not? Fiber on a light pole? Are you kidding me? Aerial fiber. So some kid on a Friday night takes out the connection when he's in his dad's pickup truck and has a 6-pack in his, and all of a sudden your fiber's down. Come on.
It's over. Yeah.
No. I'd much rather have and there's a lot of very good companies in the country in different parts of the natural in your area. And actually, I'm happy to hear that you're coming to Boston. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that, Ben? I heard you're coming to Boston.
Yeah, a little drum roll. Yeah, we got Boston. We're working with some big developers out there. We're a couple months out from finishing the data center builds, etc. You know, that's another low-lying metropolitan city that's flooded all the time, right?
Yeah, my daughter lives in the seaport, and let me tell you, it's you see the water coming up all the time.
It's right, but you know, a lot of it is education. It's explaining to people, business owners, you know, our fixed wireless is the same price. You're not paying anything more, anything less. But like, why would you want two? If they already have fiber, why would they want 2 fiber connections? It's like you're going to diversify your financial portfolio, so diversify your connectivity. Don't be silly. Like, do it right, or just use the fixed wireless as primary. It is phenomenal. And that comes back to education.
Well, that's my point. I don't even know why you need a fiber backup. If you have a redundant two wireless links, chances are both radios aren't going to break at the same time. That generally never happens.
Right. That's why we do two. We've been in the business for 21 years.
You have a hot standby setup, off you go.
Yeah.
Run them both, and if one fails, you still have amazing amount of connectivity.
Exactly. And it works. And you're proactive. You manage the network correctly. You go on site, you fix it. Customers are so happy because you're on site fixing something they didn't know may have had an issue.
But right? That's the difference between a company like Natural that really gets it and others that may, you know, 2 guys and a dog wireless ISP are not going to deliver that level of service. So it's very important when you choose your wireless provider to choose the right one. Somebody that's going to be there for multiple years that has trucks that will show up when there's a problem. Because all technology might have a problem. It's how do you deal with things when they break? Are you there in a couple of hours?
That's right.
Wow, that's pretty good.
That's right. That's exactly the point. It's all about support, customer support.
Well, we're like that with my company. So we monitor every system that we put in 24 hours a day. And if there is any problem, we proactively will rush out on scene and make sure we address that issue. That's why
you're successful. That's why we do the same thing. Everything pings back to our network operations center. You have the same thing. You're proactive. You're not reactive. Companies that are reactive have customers for maybe the term of a contract, or maybe they'll call me during the term and say, this other vendor is no good. We're having a big problem. Let's go with you. My service may have been a few bucks more, but you get what you pay for at the end of the day.
Well, if we don't deliver, we'll get blackballed by fire marshals and they won't approve our projects.
There you go. So you need to be
So
on
it's in
point.
our best interest to do an
Yeah.
outstanding job and monitor things. So if something blips and we say, we actually had a customer the other day, they lost line power for a little while. I called them and said, gee, we noticed that you had lost line power. What's going on? Yeah, we had a big storm. We're running on battery backup. No problem. We noticed the battery level. You're at 88%. Nope,
Perfect.
you're good to go.
You
And just let them
designed it.
know
You designed it correctly. You said that before. As long as you
it's been
design your
designed
stuff
correct.
correctly, you're good. You have time. Listen, I
But
appreciate
the
your time.
equipment today, equipment is great. And
Yeah.
if you put in the right gear with the right people, you'll have success.
Touche. I agree thoroughly. Thank you very much for your time today. It was really good chatting with you again. You know what? You know what it's time for? It's time to go sell something.
It is. Very good idea, Ben. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks for
Take care,
having me
Mark.
on your show.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.